And if you listen to it in chronological order, you can really hear that specific sound come into being, and how those different bands added to it. And of course, that I talked a bit about that in the first video, have their own twist of things. So it's not like they were all playing exactly the same kind of music and all sounding alike. They were not. But there are some overall general tendencies, and you can hear that here. There is so much I could go into here and say a lot about, but this video is getting much too long. One thing I should mention, I think, is that later on in the 60s, Pete Best had a band called the Pete Best Combo. So if you want to kind of follow that sideline of the story, it's actually possible. I probably make a whole video about Pete Best and his drumming at some point. There's a lot of things I want to say about that, and the reasons why he was sacked, and this discussion of was he a bad drummer or was he not. And I think there are really many things that could be said about that. And I can reveal that now. I also think there could have been several reasons for his sacking. It's like people always saying, oh, there's one reason and only one reason. Who say there can't be several reasons? And I think there is. And, you know, some of them may be more important than others. But you all know, and I guess you all experience that if you are getting tired of someone, things that aren't that important, they start to get at you and irritates and frustrates you. Small things that doesn't really matter that much, but it kind of add up, and those small things are kind of boosting the main reasons. And I think there can be said a lot about that. I won't do it now, no matter I'm very tempted to, but I won't. At some point I will make a VV video all about Pete Best and about that, and dig deep into that subject. So what should I show you more? I don't think I will show you more from this box. I think I should show you something from, well, another one of my many boxes. You can take a view here and see, well, I got quite a lot of boxes. That's my way of keeping my collection in sort of order and system, and being able to relatively quickly find something I am looking for. If it just was whoops, all there, just standing, I don't think I would be able to find anything at all. So I would take another box here and show you something from. One book here is The True Beginnings, The Beatles, by Rogue Best with Pete and Rory Best. Yes, Pete Best is in over here, and it's kind of tribute to their mother, Mona Best. She seems to have been a wonderful woman. if you are really anti Pete Best, you may have an issue with that they praising her as the mother of Mersey Beat. But one thing that is a fact is that she made this club called the Cash Bar, and in her house, so the youngsters could come and play their music. Well, not many parents did that back then, and it seems she have been a very supporting mother to Pete Best. So the issues later on, well, I tell you, she was such a supporting mother that if you missed with Pete, you missed with Mona, or Mo, as everyone called her. I guess that could go for short for both Mona and Mother. So she was just Mo. And there are some pictures of her in this book, and it seems she was a very beautiful woman. And according to this book, very sweet and nice too, maybe a bit dominating. And the sacking of Pete Best was not the first clash that happened. There is a previous story several years before Pete Best became the drummer. At that time, there was a guy in Quarrymen / Beatles called Ken Brown. They were playing at the Cash Bar. Ken Brown was really sick and ill. He almost couldn't stand on his feet, but he showed up to the job. And Mona said, "Oh, you poor boy, sit down here and have a nice cup of tea, and I take care of you. And in that condition, you shall not play." But it's so heroic that you showed up and you can hardly stand on your feet, so you got the wages for. And John, Paul, and George got furious. Said, "What? Paying him? He didn't play." So, and you know, up to there, it was before the Cavern became their home base. So the Cash Bar at that time was actually kind of their home base. But they quit it and didn't play at the Cash Bar for a long time after that. They didn't want anyone to interfere with them and decide who's to be paid and not to be paid. That was their decision, and they were really furious about it. So that was the first clash. Later on, when Pete entered in the band, actually for a while she was kind of the manager or something close to that. But what is for sure here, and what there's no doubt about, is they must have met Pete much earlier, long before he became the drummer in the band. Maybe not talked with him, maybe not tried to play with him, but they must have met him. That's for sure. You know, another guy that played a part in the Beatles story and was a member for a time, you know, of course, that was Stuart Sutcliffe. There is this book, The Beatles Shadow, Stuart Sutcliffe. It's written by Pauline Sutcliffe. That's his sister, and of course, being his sister, she knew him quite well, and she met the other guys. So it's kind of an inside story. Well, also with a bit of speculation. There is also, no, that's not true. Sorry, forget about that. But well, a little more about Pete Best, and then I leave it there and leave the rest for another video. There are this book by Spencer Lye called "Drum Out: The Sacking of Pete Best," and there's Pete Best's own book. But as some have said, I think it's in that book I showed you by 101 Myths Bonked, The Walrus was Ringo. That book, I think it's there. They have what I think is a quite fine remark saying, well, the one who gets kicked out usually do not know what has been said behind his back. I guess that's true. And that's a fine remark to make. So it's like Pete was the one left with all the questions. He's not the one that knows the answers. He's the one who's got the questions and saying, why? What did I do wrong? And why is this happening? So he's the one with the questions, not the one with the answers. Oh yeah, well, I mentioned Stuart Sutcliffe. Here's a book, Stuart Sutcliffe, a retrospective, tells a lot about him, and there are, you can see many of his pictures in there, and well, if you said Stuart Sutcliffe, you had to say Astrid Kircher, and there is also this book, Astrid Kircher, a retrospective. Of course, it's in the same series as you can guess with that title, and so, but that's a lot of important stuff. And you know, then came along Mr. Epstein. Brian Epstein, of course, there is his own book here. Well, you have to see it on the side. A cellar full of noise. I guess you all have heard the story of what John Lennon suggested for a title. We won't go into that. There is this one by Ray Coleman, Brian Epstein, the man who made the Beatles. And finally, there's this one by Deborah Geller. You know, it was his secretary, the Brian Best story. Yeah. That's about the books I will mention just now. Let's look at some music. Just before that, I was talking about Michael Holiday and Billy Fury. One thing I think is important to mention is that, you know, one of the trademarks of the early Beatles, well, the early Beatles after the breakthrough and they became popular, was that northern accent dialect up there in the area of Liverpool and Manchester, this thing called Scouse, that is quite different from BBC English. It's not like hearing the guy who reads the news in the BBC radio. It's another kind of English, this thing called Scouse, and that they had that dialect, accent, whatever you might call it, that added something to their sound. I really think that's a very important subject that there haven't been said that much about, that they were actually pronouncing the words in a way that was a part of the sound they had. And you know, with Michael Holiday and Billy Fury, there's not a thing about that. They may be from Liverpool, but they could just as well have been from Oxford. That was just a little short one I wanted to throw in. Of course, I guess you all know this box set and got it. George Martin, 50 years of recording. And of course there are some Beatles on it, but a lot of other things, both from before and after. So according to the subject we are talking about here, it's mostly the things from before that we should look at. And you probably all have heard about that parlophone was not that big thing before the Beatles, and they were making such as comedy records and such things, but there are some interesting things in here, and if you look at it from the point of view of how to produce music, I actually think there are some things here that is quite remarkable. There is this recording of a song called Robin Hood from I guess it was from a TV series, and it was the theme song. Dick James is the name of the singer. It's not that interesting a song, but from a producing point of view, there is a really interesting thing. There is a children's choir on that record, and they are mixed so great. You know that this lead singer, Dick, what was his name? Dick something. Never mind. Is just slightly louder than the choir. They are blending quite good, but he sticks out as the lead voice with the choir just a little bit behind. Not behind rhythmically, but dynamically. And it's really well blended, and it's really good making this lead singer just a little bit louder, so he sticks out. And remember, when it was done, it was somewhere back in the late 50s. For its time, it's a really good production. And that is, of course, the thing you should look for and listen after when you hear this. It's not about, well, is this song great or is it bad or what is it? It doesn't matter. And of course, there are a lot of all those. Well, I'm talking too much. And you probably all know that box set. If you don't, it's really a must-have. And to go with that, some good reading is, of course, George Martin's book, All You Need Is Ears, about his career and as a music producer. And of course, there's a lot about the Beatles, but it's not entirely about the Beatles. That this is George Martin's own story and about a lot of the different things he produced through the years. Will I go into any of that? No, I don't think I would do that now. The sessions with Tony Sheridan have been released many times on different records. I will show you a few of them. There is this box set and oh yeah, you think it's a lot of things. No, it's not. What fills up the most of it is this book, and then there's just one CD, and that's all. And what's on there is the same thing that you can find elsewhere. It's an interesting book that comes with it, but if you just want the music, it's not the one you should go for.